Hello everybody, it's Delilah and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another video in my Girls Talk series. I have previously touched on pregnancy, miscarriage, birth, and afterbirth. So if you're interested in any of those topics, want to learn anything more about those, I will leave those videos linked below. But today's topic is going to be the first 48 hours with a newborn, postpartum, after birth. My experience takes place in a hospital, so I can't give insight on home births or what that experience is like. But today I'm going to be talking about the first 48 hours in the hospital and going home. There's a lot of pure bliss and joy. There's so many emotions and recovering and learning this new little human. There's a lot to talk about and I got so many questions. I'm gonna do my best to just power through these and to give you guys as much information as I can. As always, I went over to Instagram. You guys asked so many fantastic questions. If you want to be involved in Q&As like this, if you have questions to ask me, go follow me over on Instagram. That's where I always ask or get you to ask me questions. And just to be clear, everything I'm going to be talking about is purely based off of my own experience. Every woman has an incredibly different experience, and I think that's such a beautiful part about pregnancy and birth is that no two experiences are the same. Every woman will experience it just a little bit differently. And yet there's so many ways that we can relate to one another. So I love talking about stuff like this and I love hearing your stories. So if you want to head down to the comments, tell me what was one thing that surprised you the most about the first 48 hours with the newborn. But anyways, let's dive into this. Having a second kid, did everything come second nature? Yes. For me, it did. I had been through everything before. I kind of knew the steps. I knew what to expect. And it just made the first few months with a newborn so much easier. What was your experience of cluster feeding? I didn't even know it existed. I don't think I've experienced cluster feeding with my children too much. With Eloise, everything was just a blur. Like I don't remember anything. But with Theo, I very clearly remember he cluster fed so much. I think the second night or first night he was born. No, he was born at midnight the first night, and then the following night he cluster fed like crazy, and that's when I was starting to crash and come down from my adrenaline rush. So I remember just being in the hospital all alone because Zach had to go home with Eloise, and so I was all alone. I had no help, and I was sitting up in the hospital bed like nursing him, like nodding off because I could not keep my eyes open, and it was it was a long night, and I just kept telling myself, this is what I wanted, this is what I wanted, it's gonna be okay, it's not gonna last forever. Oh, by the way, if you don't know what cluster feeding is, maybe I should talk about that first. Cluster feeding is when your baby just wants to nurse and nurse and nurse and nurse. It's their way of helping bring your milk in. It's also comforting for them, so it's a good thing because it helps your milk supply come through, but can be hard sometimes. Breastfeeding for the first time experience. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. And I quickly realized that a few days later when I had very, very, very sore nipples. But the first time with Theodore, it really just came back second nature, and he was a really good nurser, and he has always loved mama milk, so it's never been an issue. And it was just really beautiful because he latched on right away. Did you look downstairs after birth? If so, was it okay or were you mortified? I've actually never looked down there after birth. I've never even thought to look down there after birth. I just know that it hurts and I put ice packs down there and that's kind of it. I've never actually looked. How to manage the after pains. This is one of those things that I wasn't fully prepared for when I went into this whole experience. Every time you nurse your baby, your uterus will contract because nipple stimulation encourages your uterus to contract. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing because it means that your uterus is contracting and going back to where it's supposed to be, but it hurts. And it makes the first week or two of breastfeeding a little bit difficult. I even got after pains so bad when I wasn't nursing that it was like a contraction that just didn't go away for an hour, and I was just in bed like moaning and just flipping back and forth and trying to deal with this pain. It was so bad, and I got it a few times after each child, and they say it gets worse after each child. So don't worry, because it's probably not going to be that bad for you. I'm just an exception, I think. But to deal with the after pains, just deal with it like you would a period, because it kind of just feels like period cramps that kind of come and go as you're breastfeeding, which is kind of what contractions feel like in the beginning. Heat, like if you have a bag with rice and you heat it up, that's really nice. You can take Advil if it's really bad. I actually was prescribed some sort of painkiller to take for the first like 2 weeks after birth so that I wouldn't have to go through that excruciating pain. Because mine is exceptionally horrible. I also like to watch something or talk to someone or do something that will just distract me from the pain. Was having visitors overwhelming, and how did you and hubby manage them? I got a lot of questions about visitors. The first time we had a lot of visitors and it was very overwhelming. It was too many. It was definitely too many. So the next time we made sure we limit it to only family, and we scheduled times for them to come. We also kind of had to schedule times for them to come because everyone was actually at work during the day, so it was nice. We had just some time to ourselves. And then in the evening, we just kind of like took turns. One family came and then the next family came. And that was it. And for us, we prefer to only have immediate family visiting in the hospital and then slowly invite our friends over and anybody else who wants to see the baby when we're home and recovering and, you know, starting to get back into regular life. Realistically, how much sleep do you get during the first 48 hours? Zero sleep. Especially in the hospital, it is not possible to sleep. I mean, if you're a heavy sleeper and if you can fall asleep easily, it might not be an issue for you, but for me, I am the lightest sleeper. If I'm not in my own bed, in my own comfortable environment, it's really hard for me to sleep. And then having nurses come in like every 4 hours, like I don't know how it's possible to even sleep, because in between the time that the nurses are coming in, I also have to get up to nurse the baby. I'll nurse the baby, put baby down, think, okay, now I have some time to go to sleep because baby is sleeping. But no, then the nurse walks in and has to do a bunch of like checkups and stuff. And it's not a bad thing that they come in. I'm glad that they are coming in and monitoring things and making sure everything's okay, but it's just, you just prepare yourself for literally no sleep if you're in the hospital. How much blood can I expect, and does it hurt to walk, pee, and poop? Blood, I would say expect about as much blood as a heavy period. Again, it's all kind of blurry. It's probably more than a heavy period, but it really depends on the woman and the birth. I can't speak for C-sections. I've never had a C-section, so I'm not sure if the bleeding is the same or not. Actually, if you have experienced a vaginal birth and a C-section, comment down below. Is the bleeding different or is it kind of the same? They give you like gigantic diaper pads that you put in your underwear, and I think they say as long as you don't soak one of these in like an hour or two, you're good to go. But if you soak through one of those in like an hour, you need to call them, because that's not a good sign. I could be wrong. Again, it's been a little while. It's all a little bit fuzzy, but I would say expect like a really heavy period. Walking, yes, walking hurts. I've never gotten stitches, so I can imagine having stitches, how much more painful it would be to walk. The second time I gave birth though, I had zero pain. Like I had no abrasions, no stitches, no nothing. And so walking honestly wasn't even that hard. Or peeing. Peeing wasn't hard because I didn't have any cuts, and I was just like, praise the Lord, this is amazing. I felt so good after I gave birth the second time. It was so weird. But the first time I had a lot of abrasions everywhere down there. And so peeing, whoo, yeah, peeing hurt. Peeing hurt. But what they do is they give you a peri bottle that you can fill up with just lukewarm water, and every time you go to the bathroom you take that, and as you are peeing you like spray it or like squeeze it and spray it down there to like help soothe the area so it doesn't sting so much, and that really helps. You will be constipated after birth. That's a normal thing, and for me as someone with IBS, it's even worse. So I take a whole lot of stool softeners and wait a few days and then finally you know, everything happens. In my hospital, actually, they also gave us stool softeners. I can't really remember the first poop after birth. But again, I never had stitches, so it probably would have been a lot more scary and worse if I had stitches. Breastfeeding a second baby, do your boobs hurt the same as the first time you breastfeed? No. Well, not in my experience. A lot of women do experience the same whole cracked nipples thing, but for me, what I did, which I think helped a lot, was I nursed Eloise up until about 3-4 months before Theo was born. So, you know, my nipples, my boobs were still kind of used to it. It didn't hurt too much. It was just a very little bit of stinging after he latched on, and that was kind of it. But also, Theo had a good latch from the beginning, and I knew what I was doing, so I knew how to like get the boob in his mouth so that he would take it properly and latch properly. Did you feel rushed out of the hospital? I did not. Like, I wanted to leave the hospital. I could not wait to leave the hospital. I was so thankful to be at the hospital because, I mean, the second time around I hemorrhaged, and the second time around Theo's heart rate was kind of dipping up and down after he was born, so I was really thankful we were in the hospital. Oh, and with Eloise, it was really nice to just like have support and help and someone there to answer questions at any time of the day if we had questions, because obviously we didn't know what we were doing. It was nice to be at the hospital, but we really just wanted to get home so that I could sleep. What was your mental state like for the first 48 hours? Pure and utter joy and excitement and bliss. I was just, both times I was just on cloud 9. I was so happy. Nothing could bring me down, even though I was in pain, I was sleep deprived. For me, it was such a beautiful time. And then about a week after, reality started hitting in. Things kind of took a turn the first time around, like a major turn. That's something I will talk about in my next video. The next video is going to be about postpartum in general, like the first year or so, just dealing with like postpartum depression and stuff like that. So I'm not going to talk about that here. For the first 48 hours, it was just a joy. What did you find very helpful and not helpful once you were home? Mostly I just found things really helpful. When people offered to make us meals, that was huge. I loved that. People would send us things, people would give us gifts, and it was really, really sweet. What I didn't find very helpful was when people would come and say like, I can take the baby for a while, you go do your thing. It sounds really sweet, and it is really sweet, but for me personally, I wanted to be with my baby, and I kind of wanted everything else to be taken care of. Like, I wanted to spend time with my baby. I didn't want to give my baby up, because those first few days, especially with your baby, are just the most crucial, the most important. You're never gonna get them back. I never wanted to look back on those days with regret, thinking I didn't soak in that newborn time enough. So I've always just wanted to soak in that time as much as possible. Later on down the road, sure, you can take my children for a while so I can have some space. Yes, please. But in the first like 1 to 2 weeks, I just wanted to spend every waking moment with my newborn. What was one thing that surprised you the most? I don't think it was one particular thing. It was just a little bit of everything. Like, I was surprised how quickly I felt like I adapted to just being a mom and waking up every 3 hours to feed my baby. It felt really natural. I was surprised how challenging breastfeeding was, because especially the first time, like, you don't know what you're doing. I was surprised by how much I could love. How much I could love a tiny little human I've never met before. There was just so much love. What was your sleep rest schedule like immediately after delivery in the first 48 hours? There was no schedule, none whatsoever. I got this question a lot, actually, asking about like sleep schedule and if we established anything. There was nothing. For the first little while, I totally just let my baby lead. After about a week or so, we started to establish a bit of a schedule because we started to understand our baby's eating or nursing pattern, and so we started to just take that pattern and make it like a solid routine. But the first 48 hours, there's nothing. It's like a big jumble of everything, and it's almost like time doesn't exist. How was the first 48 hours with baby number 2 different than baby number 1? With baby number 2, it was so much more relaxed. It was so easy. With baby number 2, there was a lot of just learning involved, and it was hard, and it was confusing, and it was stressful. But with baby number 2, it just felt like I've done this before. I know exactly what to do. I was just so much more relaxed. Did the hospital staff give you a crash course on how to take care of the baby? The first time, yes, kind of. I think they showed us how to swaddle, and they showed us how to bath Eloise. Like, they gave her a bath there and they showed us how to do it. That's kind of it. What happens in the hospital from the time right after you give birth to the time you go home? So if you want to know exactly what happens right after birth, I did talk about that in my last video, which I'll leave linked below. After you are settled into your room, everything's kind of calmed down. That's when we usually try and just get some rest, but it doesn't happen because we're just so thrilled and excited, and I'm still on this adrenaline kick, and there's no way I'm gonna get sleep, but I always try. I believe it's every 4 hours a nurse will come in and do all the vital checks on baby, check the heart rate, check temperature and things like that. They'll also check temperature on mom as well. They don't do that every 4 hours, but for the first 12-ish hours after giving birth, they'll come and check mom, make sure everything's okay, take blood pressure. And for the first couple of checkups, they'll also push on your stomach, do the whole uterus massage thing, check your bleeding, make sure everything's okay. The second time, I actually had to pee into a container that was like inserted into the toilet so they could see how much blood I was losing and how much I was peeing, which I thought was kind of gross and interesting. You'll just kind of hang out there for a while. They'll do those checks on you regularly. There's like certain tests that have to happen at certain hours after baby is born. After baby passes all those tests and you've passed all the tests, you are cleared to go home. But in between those times, there's just a lot of nursing and changing diapers and just learning how to care for this new tiny human and learning who they are and what they like, what they don't like. It's a lot of just learning and cuddling and snuggling. Oh, one thing that I actually forgot about completely the second time around. It is normal for them to have one poopy diaper and I think one pee diaper every 24 hours for the first few days until your milk comes in, which I just totally didn't even think about the second time around because I was so used to changing diapers like every 3 hours that I was like, okay, my baby hasn't pooped yet, my baby hasn't peed yet, is this normal? But it is normal because they're just drinking colostrum and their tummies are very tiny and they can't hold very much, and so they're not getting a lot of liquid or sustenance, and so they don't have anything to excrete. Is that the word? That was kind of a rambly one, and I'm not sure if I answered that fully, but there you go. Did you have a positive start to breastfeeding? Were they supportive in the hospital? The first time around, it wasn't a very positive start to breastfeeding. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. And it was starting to get really painful, so I actually called the nurse in to come and spot me and see what I was doing wrong, and they really didn't say anything. They really didn't give me any helpful advice. Like, it was kind of pointless. So I just kind of went into it not really knowing what to do. And then a few days later, when they did a home check, the nurses will come to your house a few days after giving birth to just check up on baby, check up on mom, make sure everything's going okay. She actually helped me a lot with learning how to latch and breastfeed, which was a lot more helpful than the nurses in the hospital. How scary is taking your baby home for the first time? For us, it wasn't scary at all. We were just so excited. Please tell us about Zach's part over the first 48 hours. Okay, I have been meaning to film a video with Zach and to get him involved and to get him, answering questions about this too, because it's so interesting to hear the dad's perspective. I'm actually really curious about this. I want to ask him these questions and just get a deeper insight on what his experience was like. But it is almost impossible to film a video with him right now because he's back at work. And so the only time we can film is on the weekend, which we're always busy, or at night. And at night, well, I mean, lighting's not great, but also we're so tired that we can't properly form sentences. So we're trying to find a time, and I promise that series is coming. Did you fart a lot? I had to answer this question because the funniest thing happened, and I don't know if it's just me. I don't even know if I've talked about this on the internet before, but when I gave birth to Eloise, I could not control my farts. It just came and I couldn't stop it. I was so embarrassed and I was so scared that it was going to happen when we had a bunch of people over. But thankfully they were quiet and they weren't smelly, but I couldn't control it. I just came. How did you feel comfortable sleeping while your newborn was asleep? That's hard. For the first like week or so, it is like so hard to sleep. You're just constantly worrying about this new little human, and are they breathing? Are they okay? Are they swaddled properly? Are they going to get out of their swaddle? Are they going to like bring the swaddle over their face? Are they going to like somehow suffocate themselves? All these things are just running through your head, and it's really, really hard to sleep because they're so brand new and they're so tiny and so delicate. And especially for me, because I have very, very fast deliveries, and because they come so quickly, they have a lot of mucus and just goop still stuck in their lungs, and they cough it up. And so I am just absolutely terrified when that happens, that it would happen while they're laying on their back while they're asleep and they'll choke on it. That is my biggest fear. So for the first like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, I just basically do not sleep. What are the tests the baby has to pass in order to go home? There's a few of them, and I don't remember them all, but the ones I do remember is there is a hearing test, and they just like stick a machine kind of in the baby's ear and like monitor stuff on a screen because it's like attached to a wire that attaches to a computer thing. For another one, they have to prick your baby's heel and collect some of the blood and like put it on this chart or something. It's really fuzzy because when they did it, I was like half asleep. Didn't really know what was going on. All I knew was that they had to prick my baby's heel, and they gave me sugar water to give to my baby if they started crying. Pretty sure there's a couple other tests, but honestly I can't remember. Everything is kind of just a blur. What does your tummy feel like? Super, super squishy. When my milk first came in, I felt like a leaky mess. Do you have any tips for next time? Yes, use a Haka, or like Haka is the brand, a silicone breast pump. You can get them on Amazon. They're super cheap. I'll link them down below. That is my biggest hack for any breastfeeding mom, especially in the beginning. Use one of those. You can collect so much of the leaky milk. And then you can collect it and freeze it for future use. I don't have one available right now. It's put in storage because I don't use it anymore, but it's just a silicone pump that you like squeeze. You stick it to your boob and like you let go, and it suctions to your boob. It helps to express any of the letdown, and then you can nurse your baby on the other breast. And while you're nursing, all the letdown gets collected. It's so great. It really saved me from being engorged the second time around, and it collected so much milk. I had such a huge stash in the freezer, and I didn't even have to pump. At what point did you give a pacifier? Right away with both babies. Actually, one of the bad experiences we had with the nurse was she saw that Eloise had a pacifier in her mouth, and she's like, oh, you shouldn't do that. That causes nipple confusion. So I took it out of her mouth, and as soon as she left, I stuck it back in because this was my decision. And that was just her opinion. I've never experienced nipple confusion because of using the pacifier, because the pacifier isn't what gives them milk. It just comforts them. They know where their milk comes from. But again, every baby's different. For us, it's never been a problem. I can't remember, did either babe have jaundice? No, we've never experienced that. I don't know what that's like. If you've experienced that, let me know in the comments. So what did you have to do? I know there's something like you have to put the baby under a certain light for a certain amount of time, but what does that look like? Because I'm not sure. Talk about baby gagging on fluid after a fast delivery. I did kind of touch on this already, but I'm gonna just talk about it more because that's one of the things that was really shocking for me. So the first time it happened, Zach had left the room to go and move the van. All the nurses were out of the room, and so I was there alone nursing Eloise, and all of a sudden she just starts coughing, and like all this gunk and stuff is coming out of her mouth and like all over me, and I was so scared and I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on. And then again later on it happened, and she was just like swaddled and she was sleeping, and then all of a sudden she just like starts coughing and gagging and she can't breathe. And so we called the nurses in because we're panicking, like what's going on? And so the nurse quickly takes her, turns her over onto her stomach, and kind of gently pats her back, rubs her back, and she gets the gunk out, she gets everything out of her lungs, and then she's fine. This happened a lot with both my children for the first 3-ish days of their newborn life, and it was terrifying every time it happened. I think it happens more so with fast births, fast deliveries, but I'm not 100%. I don't know. I mean, I've never had a slow birth. I've only ever had really intense, crazy fast birth. So I can't speak from that perspective, but just be prepared. That's everything for today's video. I hope I covered this topic enough. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comment section below. If I'm not able to answer them, maybe some of you other mamas can answer and help each other out. Share your experiences, answer questions down below. Let's help these first-time moms who are here to learn and to prepare themselves to feel prepared and to feel educated. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for being here. If you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would subscribe and hit that bell button below so you don't miss out on any new videos. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.